Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from podweather.com and Internet Partnership Radio with an update on the tropics and Hurricane Bertha. Over the last 24 hours, you can see what's happened. Bertha has really been going through some inner core fluctuations. You can even see from this faraway image that the system's gotten larger and the eye wall has collapsed and a new one is beginning to develop. And that's not good news for Bermuda because you're now under a tropical storm watch. As the system expands in size, there is a greater chance that tropical storm winds can get to you. In the central Atlantic, we continue to watch a few tropical waves, one right in this region here. Some of the models show moving towards the Caribbean and becoming something. And then off Africa, this low pressure just exited, and the models are in pretty good agreement that we're going to get a storm in this region that'll move more towards the west and further south than Bertha did, and it might not be in all that bad conditions for gradual development. So we'll talk about that. First, Hurricane Bertha is of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It was at 28.5 north, 62.0 west. Winds were still 85 miles an hour, gusting to 105, moving northwest now at only 5 miles an hour, and the pressure was still at 980. A recon aircraft, Hurricane Hunter, is on the way out there, and we'll see how strong Bertha really is, and if that outer eye wall that I'll show you in a minute is helping the system strengthen. Whether it strengthens or not, it's going to be a hurricane as it moves slowly to the north and then northeast, and finally weaken to a tropical storm. The National Hurricane Center thinks so by 8 a.m. Wednesday. We're still talking about it here, not all that far from, say, 35 north, and considering it's almost at 30 already, that is not a lot of movement for a system in this part of the Atlantic. Bermuda, you're not exactly in the cone of uncertainty anymore, but the reason why you're now under a tropical storm watch is because the wind radii, as the system expands and fluctuates, could clip you. You can see here if the system moves close enough, you could get clipped by tropical storm winds, but those hurricane force winds are in an area closer to the center, and it would have to get pretty close for you to get in those. So right now, hurricane conditions don't seem likely, but certainly tropical storm conditions are possible. You can see the visible satellite loop as the sun comes up, a very large eye forming now with Bertha. As the inner eye wall collapses, the new outer eye wall takes form. That's called an eye wall replacement cycle. You'll hear that a lot this hurricane season. Beautiful outflow in all quadrants here. This system has very good ventilation, but it's still trying to fluctuate that inner core there, and until that inner core clears out, we're not going to see any strengthening. But it is always possible that this could certainly become a Category 2 hurricane again, and maybe even if the eye clears out real good, this could take a shot again at Category 3 major hurricane strength. Bermuda sitting right here, the system inching off closer and closer to you, but right now it looks like, again, you're not expected to get directly in the eye to any extent, so that is good news for Bermuda, but you still have to keep a close eye on it at this point. You can see the general forecast models are still in slow, erratic agreement. A few of the models are taking the system to the north, then back to the east, and this one here straight back south and southwest over 5 days, having it back here moving west. That's a whack job model, but you never know with an erratic track like this. UK Met here, kind of erratic and generally off to the north. Canadian still further to the west, but keep in mind that would take it even west of Bermuda. That's unlikely, but it does move it out quicker than any model. The GFDL in here keeps it moving fast and slams it. Keep in mind, these areas up here, the Canadian Maritimes and whatnot, even Nova Scotia needs to be keeping a watch on this, because this is going to be a powerful system as its low pressure is going to move out 5-6 days from now. At least that's what it's looking like. But again, a very slow and erratic movement over the next several days. Now here's the reason why we have such erratic movement with Bertha. You can see on the water vapor here, we have this trophiness that is protecting the U.S. This is the reason why Bertha is not going to hit the United States. This trophiness here is going to keep it from that. But we also have some high pressure built in around the hurricane. And what that's basically doing is keeping it kind of bottled up here in a state of rather weak steering currents. And so the best bet, which is the official forecast, is that this thing's going to kind of be stuck here and is going to kind of bob its way north and northeast, and that should kind of keep it away from Bermuda and the East Coast. but that is uncertain. It could always go further west. It could always go further east. Right now, something generally like that is likely, but again, it's really tough to say because some of these models really keep Bertha around a long time. Now, the Euro model here, we're talking next Friday, a week from now, still shows Bertha sitting pretty much the same area it is. And note what happens. It shows another system coming up from our tropical wave off Africa north of Puerto Rico. Now, if this would continue, it would likely show weaker heights with this ridge because of Bertha being left behind and a more northward track after that, but it would be too early to tell. But look at this. We're talking the 21st of July. Bertha still hanging around south of Nova Scotia. The NAM model in 84 hours shows Bertha basically in the same spot and shows a wave that's in the central Atlantic entering the Caribbean. Also note our system here in the Eastern Pacific spinning up. I'll talk about this as well. Now, the GFS long range, which has been better recently with detecting features off of Africa that may or may not develop, you can see it has Bertha currently sitting where it is, and note what happens over the next several days. Bertha just doesn't move. By the 16th, 17th, 18th, we have another system pulling up towards the islands, but Bertha is still sitting here. And what basically ends up happening is by the 20th of July, Bertha finally starts getting out of here, and that helps to draw a system further to the north, and you can see what happens with that. And then even another system in 384 hours, or rather 336, starting to develop off Africa. So we're going to have a lot of activity to keep track of, but if Bertha sticks around, that's only going to prolong the agony potentially for Bermuda, with certainly high seas and swells, not only for Bermuda, but the East Coast as well. You can see our wave in the Central Atlantic here. The NAM model and the GFS is showing this making it up towards the islands in Puerto Rico. Keep an eye on this. There's Bertha south of Bermuda, of course. And further out in the Eastern Atlantic, we saw this low exit. And all of this is kind of showing development possibilities the next several days, and we're going to have to keep a close eye on that, and you can stay tuned here to Pod Weather for the latest. You can see again the moist flow off Africa is very favorable. Not a lot of Saharan air layer, some, but not a lot. And again, these waves are moving off like hotcakes, and it's only July 11th. The peak of the hurricane season is still an entire 2 months from now, so we'll wait and see how much activity we get. You can see sea surface temperatures for any development are very favorable, especially further south, which is kind of where we're thinking this may develop, and head towards the islands in this region near the Bahamas. That is much warmer water than even Bertha had, and Bertha was able to become a Category 3-4 hurricane. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with that. Wind shear-wise, you can see things are pretty favorable in the eastern and central Atlantic, and also in the western Atlantic, north of the islands in the Bahamas. And it's unknown when our system, if we get a system, will get towards the Caribbean. If it gets in this area, how high is wind shear out here? That is a question we do not know at this point. In the Eastern Pacific here, we have an invest sitting right here, and you can see there's a good pattern with it. There is low pressure, and the AVI color shows that there is some cold cloud tops with this. And if we take a closer look at that on the visible satellite loop, you're actually able to see where we have that spinning low pressure right in there, and it's kind of having some easterly shear, which is why it's having trouble spinning up. But I'm telling you now, if this gets underneath the convection, we could see this go pretty quick. And looking at that colorized AVN again, note the kind of feathering of the clouds here, and we do have that low-level circulation that is not yet under the convection. If that gets under, we could see this thing quickly become a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane, as some of the models indicate. Further off the coast near Puerto Vallarta out here, we have another invest, and this could see slow development over the next several days. The next two names on the Eastern Pacific list are Alita and Fausto, so we'll have to wait and see if we get those systems. Finally, there's an invest area also in the West Pac, north of the Philippines, south of Taiwan. Keep an eye on this over the next several days, as something could happen with that. I'm Mike Naso from IPR. That's the latest on the tropics. Stay tuned to podweather.com. We'll keep you informed.